What's going on, everyone? Alex Da Silva.
And Lucy Kai from Happy as Larry Group. And it's Tuesday. Tuesday today.
Yeah.
Happy Tuesday. And it was a lovely bank holiday weekend. And over the weekend, we held our first Happy as Larry retreat with the 30-day participants, rounding off their challenge. And yeah, and it was emotional, it was overwhelming, it was beautiful, and we already know that the people that did the 30-day challenge and attended that retreat have got so much out of it so far. So, and we can't wait to share it with you guys to show you what we do.
Tuned.
It's amazing stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It really is.
Really, really amazing. Anyway, our topic video today is about
it's anger.
Anger.
Oh.
And this is about the 10th time we've tried to do this video because all we keep doing is laughing, and that's obviously not what we want to do for this video because it's about anger. We want to talk about anger. We seem to just be laughing about it.
Exactly.
Anyway, this video was requested by one of Alex's friends. So thank you, you know who you are. And we'll try to do it some justice. We'll talk about anger as a primary emotion, where it comes from and how people experience it. Also, how we have experienced it in our lives for ourselves, and also how we've experienced it from other people. And also how you can get some sort of healing through it, how you can manage it better, and how we might have done as well. We can share tips and how it affects us physically and all the rest of it. So yeah. So
what is anger?
Anger is a primary emotion, and everybody feels it throughout their life, throughout their childhood, and also when they get older as an adult. It's evolved as a way of surviving. It's a primal instinct. It comes from the fight or flight reaction, from when we were cavemen millions of years ago, and we might have been being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. And that's why we feel anger, because it is a natural thing to feel. So there's nothing wrong with actually feeling anger.
No. It's a natural emotion that's been passed down through generations and generations and generations, and it's one of many emotions that we master, don't we?
Yeah.
And it's one which sort of sits on the fear negative side, but nonetheless sometimes it can be useful, and at times not.
Yeah, I think that, well, because any emotion that we feel there's a reason for it. So we all feel, if we feel anger about something, there's a reason for it. But we can sometimes feel it rationally, and we can sometimes feel it irrationally. And so the physical symptoms of anger are normally you feel hot and sweaty, you feel like you want, like it's almost like a feeling of wanting to explode. But there is like there's a natural, it's adrenaline basically, that your body releases adrenaline because it's telling you to survive against something. So you feel anger, and you get a rush of adrenaline to deal with the potential danger that you might be faced against. Yeah,
and that can be triggered in any sort of way. For me, I remember when I experienced anger, for me how it triggered was, some of those symptoms was to kind of get hot and sweaty, and I would tense up, and sometimes I'd even start shaking. You know, if my back was if I was backed up against the wall, it was one of these things, which Lucy mentioned, which is fight or flight. And for me was, well, let's fight. And, and so I guess, again, it's just one of these instincts, and it can be generated with anything. Sometimes it could be, a war of words. It could be, also from a physical perspective as well. It can just be something that's just triggered, something that could be a day at work, someone who's got, I don't know, bad breath, sweaty pits on a train or public transport, or some, being squashed, on your way home. There are so many different ways which, anger can be aroused, but they all trigger for the same reasons, don't they?
Yeah, and I think that, there, like I mentioned before, there's rational anger because someone might be criticising you, or you might feel threatened because somebody's left you feeling frustrated, and that, you feel angry because that provokes that reaction in you, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's not okay. That actually it's appropriate in that situation. But I think that the reason for this video is also to talk about anger and how to turn it rational, and how, I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but and how to also cope with it, and how to identify why you might be feeling angry, because you might be feeling angry a lot more than you, I don't like using the word should, but than you actually should, because some things, like what Alex just mentioned about someone having sweaty pits on the train, or someone might barge into you by accident or whatever, you know, for some people that the anger reaction from that is completely irrational to do with the situation that's actually happening. So basically, to round it up, it's okay to feel angry. Everyone feels anger, but certainly, you know, speaking from my experience, when I was growing up, I didn't learn how to feel anger. I didn't learn properly what anger was, and my view of being angry or feeling anger was that it was wrong, that it was not okay to feel anger, because when I saw anger in my family environment, it was the other end of the scale. You know, there was violence, there was screaming, there was shouting, there was slamming of doors, and you know, it was completely like, so what I learned when I was young was to feel angry was that was what was going to happen. So anger can't be a good emotion. You can't feel anger, when actually that's not the truth, because anger is as much as a natural emotion is happiness, sadness, grief, frustration, whatever else it is. So when I started this journey into learning more about myself, I had to understand that it was okay for me to get angry, because I had a lot of stored up anger from the past, which had never been dealt with, because I never knew how to express it.
Yeah, no, very true. And I was very much the same. You know, growing up in my household, you know, I remember things from very little. You know, I must have been, you know, I can kind of remember around sort of like 4 to 6, you know, remembering arguments that were happening, you know, in my house. And you know, there was, again, a lot of screaming. Sometimes it got a little bit, you know, sort of physical. And, you know, what happened to me, what I learned from that was not to get into a confrontation. You know, that for me was a real tough one, because, you know, when people started screaming and shouting, there was in a sort of in a relationship way or with family, if that would happen to me, what I would do is I will back off. You know, I would use, you know, anger, depending on how it came about, I would react in different ways. If I was being, you know, attacked physically, then of course I'd stick up for myself. So then I would fight. But there would be other times where I would fly. And it was really interesting for me, because once I started, you know, like Lucy, once I started working through this process and understanding what anger is, you know, I started to realize that it's okay for me to feel anger. It's okay for me to, you know, to be able to stick up for myself, you know, to be able to, you know, to exchange words with someone if they're being, you know, mean to me, or if they're saying things which, you know, they shouldn't be. And, you know, again, one of the things that we want to mention is that it doesn't matter what your age is, it's okay for you to experience that, you know. And if someone is bullying you, or if you're, you know, if there are things that can happen to you which has been traumatic, then it's okay for you to feel angry. You know, it's okay for you to defend yourself. You know, you don't have to kind of suffer in silence, because what can happen with that is you store, you know, which one of the things Lucy mentioned, you know, you can store, and I did as well, you can store this anger, because you weren't shown how to manifest it in the right way, you know, to sort of to voice it in the right way. Then what happens is all of that stored negative energy one day has to come out, and it can come out in the wrong way and at the wrong time with the wrong person.
And I think that leads us nicely on to the next bit, which is talking about irrational anger. And irrational anger is exactly what Alex said about these emotions being stored up over years and years and years and years. Where normally when you were a child, where you just weren't heard, you weren't allowed to express yourself, you didn't know how to express when you were feeling angry, because there was stuff going on to you, like happening to you, where you was experiencing anger around you. And that, in itself might have made you frightened, but also angry as well, because like, why is this happening? This doesn't feel right. So the irrational anger comes out later in life, or sometimes as kids start to come into puberty, the irrational anger starts to come out, and that can be through physically hurting people, bullying people, hitting people, punching things, slamming doors, and or it could be emotionally abusive to someone. You might be, there is a way of being really intimidating to someone by shouting or speaking in a way that's very frightening for somebody else to experience, and that in itself is real anger, stored up anger that person is putting onto someone else because they've not learned how to deal with it, or sadly that they were put through horrible things when they were growing up that wasn't very nice. And normally it's irrational anger is like I'm saying about this stuff, it's not connected to the current situation. The saying that I heard when I first came into this process of recovery was, if it's hysterical, it's historical. And this is really true with anger. If someone explodes because I don't know, like they can't plug a plug into the wall or something, it's completely irrational to the current situation. There's something else that hasn't been processed from their past.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I've experienced that myself, and it's one of those interesting things, isn't it? This is what I find, with the human body, the human mind, and how we work is we store, master and process, millions and millions and millions of behaviors, and it's incredible how it all kind of interlinks, and sometimes it's so hard to find out how these things come together. But as Lucy said, it's really, really important to understand, why am I feeling angry over something so small? Why am I flipping out or mistreating my partner, or it could be parents, kids, whatever. And I remember there were times with me where I would scream and shout at my kids, and later would feel really guilty for it, and not really realizing why, and feeling really sad for it as well, and it would really upset me. So I would go from being really angry and cross and shouting and screaming, and all of a sudden I'd kind of go off on my own and just kind of have my own time and just feel like I would feel really crap, but couldn't really understand why. And then I started to look deeper into the reasons why, and I understood it was just mastered behaviors, and it was things that were also taught to me, ways of parenting, things that get passed down through generations, and things that you pick up along the way, in life, coping mechanisms, and so. And again, for me, it was just defense mechanisms because of certain things that I'd been through. And what happened was then I was taking it out on other people. And, and anger can lead to some real illnesses, can't it?
It can cause, so twofold really. I mean, what we'll talk about first is the physical symptoms, ailments that you can get from anger, and it can cause problems with digestion, it can cause issues with sleeping, it can cause skin disorders, and it can impair your immune system to actually fight against other illnesses as well. And I think one thing that I've learned as well about a lot of people since working with people because of this stuff, that people talk about having illnesses, people talk about getting stomach cramps and migraines and stuff like that, and that they've got issues with their skin. And what I understand it to be now is that it's stored emotions that they haven't dealt with and they haven't looked at, and because we are talking about anger in this video, obviously we can only really talk about anger as the emotion, but I am a great believer in that if we don't process things that are overwhelmingly difficult for us to deal with, that it comes out some way. It will come out in an illness, it will come out in your muscles hurting. If I have unprocessed emotions, I get pain in my shoulder and pain in my back, and that can be a combination of a feeling of anger and various other emotions that go with it as well, like sadness and grief and things like that. But it can come out in all sorts of physical illnesses. And I think one thing to say about this as well is, if you're watching this video and you you realise that you've had issues with anger, and you do have issues with your anger now, or you grew up in an environment where you experienced a lot of anger, and you're getting, physical ailments, you're getting problems with your digestion or your sleeping patterns, excuse me, or you're always getting ill, it's worth looking at why that might be happening. Is it to do with that? Is it to do with the fact that you've got a lot of unprocessed stuff that you need to really work through?
Yeah, and it's definitely worth looking at these things, because it can lead to to some more serious problems, can't it? And
Psychological
the
issues.
psychological issues, definitely.
Yeah.
Which is, and this is where things can get a lot deeper, and we've been there. We've been there, with eating disorders and of course addiction, which we talk a lot about, and we've been very open about it as well, because not dealing with these unprocessed emotions, it's really dangerous. And we listen, some of the stuff that we did this weekend, on one of our workshops, it was incredible to see how things come up, for people, things that some people were coming up to us and saying, wow, I didn't even realize that this was in there, and things that they didn't even realize was even an issue. And then once you highlight something and then they process it, it's just incredible, because sometimes we don't even connect the dots. It takes somebody to take us through that process, doesn't it, to connect those dots. So self-harming is another one as well, isn't it?
Especially for teenagers and young children.
Yeah, huge at the moment.
It's a massive release of frustration.
It is, because this is the thing that I've realised as well. My daughter is 12 and my son is 19, and thankfully they haven't gone through these things. But I know my daughter in particular has shared with me that she knows people who have been self-harming. I know people who are in their adults, they're adults and they self-harm, and it's such a it's a very dangerous thing to do. And listen to the word, you are self-harming. It's not self-love, it's not self-care. You're harming yourself even more. And what you're doing is by keeping these things inside you, and in your self-harming, what you're doing is you're just adding to the to the anger, you're adding to the sadness, to the poison. And what you need to do is you need to get the right help, don't you, Luce? And to make sure that you're releasing this stuff, because it's really dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, and one last one is depression, which it's so rife amongst society. It's almost starting to sound like a normal thing to suffer from, depression. And why should it be? It's so, that's not to say that it's not real, because of course people do suffer with depression, but it's so, now it's becoming so common for people to be suffering from depression, to be signed off from work with depression, to just, depression gets thrown around a lot. And it's because of all these things. It's because people have had things happen to them that there's gone unprocessed, and they think that they're all right because they've got on with their life and they've got a family and they've got married and they've got a job and various other things. But then that depression creeps in, or you might have you might not necessarily an eating disorder like bulimia or anorexia. You might overeat on your emotions. You might eat too much. You might be addicted to sugar, which a lot of people are. And you might be using food to deal with these emotions that you haven't processed. So basically, it's a big problem.
It's huge.
Also, so basically moving on, like if you have anger issues, what should you do? And one of the very first obvious answers to this is to find a therapist who can help you to process things that happen to you growing up, things that happen to you in your teenage years, and things that happen to you as an adult as well. They all affect us, and they're all reasons why we might be struggling with anger as an emotion and trying to express it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're an adult, this is going to be your first route, is to go out and get some professional help, and it's highly advised. Now, if you're a teen and you're watching this, go and speak to your parents, or go and speak to a teacher or a friend, someone that you trust that will be able to help you to get the professional help listen, there is no shame in doing this. You know, it's really important that you go out and get some help for this, because this does get worse, you know, if you don't deal with it, and you will get better if you do. So just look into it.
I think one thing worth mentioning there as well is, if you are younger, like Alex was saying, to understand that there isn't something wrong with you because you feel this way.
Absolutely.
There isn't something wrong with you if you have been cutting yourself. There isn't something wrong with you if you don't know how to express yourself.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you.
No.
You just need to find a way of dealing with it and having an outlet. And getting some help around it, because these behaviours aren't healthy behaviours. But like, I want to really drum that home, that it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. I think I would have really liked to have heard that when I was growing up.
Absolutely.
About a lot of things. However, that's another video. Or a few anyway.
No, exactly.
And one of the next things to advise or to say, that, and what we've learned from dealing with such emotions, is to practice meditation. Learn breathing techniques of dealing with anger when it arises. If you're in a situation when you're starting to feel that bubbling up, and it does feel irrational, then learn to breathe and just focus on your breath and become present in the moment. Practice mindfulness and being aware of your surrounding, and surround yourself with people that aren't angry. That are happy as well, that are going to have that effect on you.
But listen, it's so true, and I think, you know, your surroundings are everything, you know, and sometimes we can't pick, you know, our surroundings, but I think if you can put yourself in a place, you know, where it is positive and you are doing the right things, and if you're doing those things for yourself, then that's great, because that's going to get you out of that anyway, you know, and that is the most important thing. You know, and as you know, it's one of these things, isn't it? Surround yourself with the right people, you know, and you're going to get to where you need to be. So absolutely.
Yeah, there's other things that you can do. Light an incense, you can burn a candle, you can run yourself a bath, you can listen into some calming music. There's loads of stuff on YouTube that you can listen to. Or just some of your favourite songs, watch a comedy. There's so many things that you can do, but I think
going to the gym, training.
I think I think normally, but it would be like, in this instance, I guess it would be more like practicing yoga and Pilates, and just to kind of help with bringing yourself from not feeling angry, if that makes sense, because but working out is obviously very good for you, and keeps you healthy and keeps your emotions. It does help to actually process some of your emotions as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So, but one thing that we hadn't really mentioned yet, but actually I've had a lot of experience with people that have been angry in my life, that I've now learned, and now through doing my studies and becoming a therapist, is that anger as an emotion it masks up fear. It masks fear. So the angrier the person, the more fearful that they are inside, because they don't really know how to deal with that fear that they've got. And it's almost like it's a defense mechanism. If someone is outwardly angry, like they are physically violent, or, you know, at the other end of the spectrum, that they are a murderer, or that they're psychopathic, or whatever, you know, that other end of the spectrum, that they are the most fearful of people, because they are holding and hiding a lot of secrets to themselves, that they don't really like themselves very much. So absolutely. Just to be aware that if somebody does approach you who is really angry, you know, they're normally very, very fearful, and that's the reason why they are really, really angry, because they've got a lot of fear inside of them.
Absolutely. And listen, one thing to mention as well is, look, we weren't born angry. You know, you're not born into this world, you know, angry at the world and angry at everybody and pissed off. It's one of these things that, you know, we do master these behaviors. There are various different, you know, circumstances which could lead us to where it is. Some of it are completely out of our control, and it is very important to mention that the things that happen to you that are out of your control are not your fault. You know, and I'm saying that because it could trigger something, you know, in you, if it's a real deep rooted issue, or, you know, or a trauma. It's really worth mentioning that, you know, you're not getting angry just because you're being completely irrational and a psycho. There is a reason why. So please look at that. You know, when we always want to mention these things, you know, everything that we do. I know we're talking about anger, but you know, we're a company that wants to bring love into the world, you know, and we want to help people, you know. So yes, this is a topic about anger, but we want to finish in a positive way. And the most positive thing to say is find love.
Find love. I was going to say love, but actually I was thinking about the last point of
Yes.
it is like you touched on about the root
Yeah.
of the problem. It's identifying the fear that you feel. So getting to the root of the problem. And that fear, sadly, that fear could have been put on you by someone else.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time that is the reason why that happens, because somebody else put their fear onto you. But what now? You know, you can take responsibility, take ownership for your own life, and identify the fear. Go back and find the root of the problem, and that is a way of dealing with any irrational anger issues that you might have today that you are struggling with.
Yeah, exactly. Self-care, self-love, look after yourself.
Heal the body, mind and soul, man.
Exactly. That's what it's
it.
all about. That's it. You know,
And love, yeah, like you said.
Yeah. Listen, life.
Practice love.
Yeah, exactly. And we're always here. You know, so let's never, you know, forget to mention that we are always here. And as you know, you can always reach us. You know, you can reach us on our website, which is www.happyasllarrygroup.com. You can find us across all social medias.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat,
Facebook.
Facebook.
Yeah, so we're pretty much across everything. Yeah, and listen, leave your comments below, and if there is anything you want to talk to us which is confidential, there is a contact part on our website where you can just email Lucy and I directly, and we will be more than happy to work with you and you know, and help you out if you want to. So have an incredible day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world.
Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. Don't be angry at the world.
Don't be angry.
Yeah, life's too short.
Give love, man.
Exactly. And look, thank you so much, guys, for watching the videos, as always. Please share the videos. The more you share, the more people we help. Please leave your comments. Let us know if you relate to something. And as always, we are now getting more and more people asking, can you please do a video on this topic? So do let us know if there is a topic you want us to talk about. And we will, won't we?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome stuff. Listen, guys, have an amazing day, afternoon, evening, whatever you're doing. We'll see you soon. Take care.
See you. Bye.